say one thing you do better than anyone. Anyone out there, and has caught my attention, is lasering in on questions where it comes down to this. We know what the fundamental duties are of men. We know what our rights are. Let's get past that discussion. But no one wants to define what that is for women. And ultimately, if people think that's offensive, you can scream until you're blue in the face. Young men are checking out, they're not getting married, and that's not good for our country. That's not good for our birth rate. That's not good for our society. So do we want to deal with the offense that is the reason for men checking out? Or do we want to simply leave it at, well, that's offensive, we don't want to ever place duties on women?
Yeah, so, I mean, this is the fundamental question. So let's take everything, every type of political ideology you can think of, every type of ideology you can think of, and just put them in a series of propositions, logical propositions. If we take a bird's eye view of all of the world, here's what the world really is. It's a series and sequence of men who are each other over resources and land. Okay?
Right.
That's what every nation is. That's what every tribe is.
Today it could be over kicks.
Yeah, it could be over whatever, right? But fundamentally, that really is what's going on. Now, men intuitively actually understand this. In fact, they don't even have a problem with this, where they're like, yep, it's going to be our tribe and your tribe. That's the way it is, right? You don't even really have to describe this reality for them because they just understand that that's the reality. Because of that, what has happened is it falls to the duty of the stronger sex to protect women and the weaker sex. I completely agree that that is true. But also it falls to them the duty of procurement of resources, the refinement of resources, the distribution of resources. And this is at the political level down, the distribution of resources. So that's all politicians ever fight about, all day, every day, nonstop. So if we're in the distribution phase, right, men have procured this and, they're distributing it, and it's women and children who are the primary beneficiaries of it and not men. We know what our duties are. They're very complete and they're not very complex. Yeah. Protectors, provider, right? And that's how you demonstrate we're the protectors and providers.
Skilled lover, but sure.
Yeah, so what are women? What are their duties? So here's my question. I'll ask you, what is a woman's duty? What are her duties that are on par with that of men?
Well, hold on a second. Before Gerald answers, I think you did a good job because you put him on the spot. I'll give you time to think about it. Yeah. I think you did a really good job of, and this is something that you also address, overt feminism versus covert feminism. You were on Piers Morgan with Tommy Lahren. A lot of people ran the clip where, there was some back and forth kind of dunking Snippy, but a lot of people missed this macro point that you made, which I think is the crux of it.
So I believe there we go again. Piers. I'm a woman of virtue. I happen to be independently successful. I have a husband who's not only a former professional athlete, but is currently a professional baseball coach. So is he not a masculine man? I mean, I'm confused here. What's your concept of a masculine man? Mine is a man who respects me.
Yeah, that misses the point, though. Like, you're still not contending with the argument that I'm making. What's your point? You're saying inside of society, right this second, right, masculinity is not only punished, but also women on the right, covert feminists on the right, are constantly and consistently talking about how they need to have privilege in society. I want men. Their version of masculinity is men who take care of us, men who protect us, men who do all of this. Those are all duties that men have towards women. Great. What are the duties that women have towards men? What are the duties that women have towards anything? What do men get out of this arrangement? What are we getting out of this arrangement? Can you tell me?
I mean, as I was going to answer a second ago,
I don't want to interrupt you.
Hang on one second. Let Tommy respond.
Most men are born that way.
Let Tommy respond to that, and then I'll come to you, Jez. And then Sean, you've been waiting patiently. So
most men are born to be protectors and providers. I can't imagine my dad saying, you know what, to my mom, you know what, I'm not going to be a protector and a provider unless you do this. That's not how real men operate. Real men are protectors and providers, and they marry women who hopefully have some virtue, but also bring a lot to the table as well, that are great mothers, great wives, caretakers of the home. There's nothing wrong with being a traditional wife and mother. You're misunderstanding me if you think that I think that women should just be out doing whatever they want. I think that there are gender roles that should be respected. But I don't think a man needs to get something out of it to be a manly man, a protector and a provider. If you think you need to get something out of it, I quite frankly don't consider you a real man.
Okay. So a lot to unpack there, as people say. I will say you do need to provide something for him to be a manly man for and solely dedicated to you. I think that's a fundamental misunderstanding. Yeah, should it be a man in society, but one dedicated to you. Full disclosure, Tommy Lahren, if you've watched the show for a significant period of time, has been on. I have no ill will toward Tommy Lahren. I just think that was a seminal moment here in this movement because you've been often misrepresented. Sometimes people are like, he just dunks on whores. although when in Rome, every now and then.
Yeah.
But that's not what you're about. You really, you are, I hate to use the term educator because it sounds so self-important.
Logician would be a good one.
There you go. Okay. So, and you've talked about the way you approach it.
Yeah, so a focused logician, focusing from the Christian ethics side. The reason that this is obviously controversial and stun-locking for people is because they expect, Christians to act in a very effeminate way, because the masculinity of Christianity, especially on the Protestant side, has been completely sucked out by these blood-circling, viperous, sewing circle Christians, is what I call them, and they're covert feminists.
That's a long name.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like looking for a bunch of adjectives to lace together.
We could maybe just like bumper sticker it to shrill bitches.
Yeah, that's where that word.
But I understand. So you were asking him before.
Yeah, so like what is, and
duty.
I thought this was a really important question that I hadn't really thought as much about until I saw that clip with you and Tommy. I was like, man, this goes right to the heart of some of the things that I've been thinking about and talking with my wife about. Wouldn't it be great if somebody was articulating that for women today? Because it seems to be a huge disconnect. And you can go back biblically and go, okay, well, what does the Bible kind of say about this? Well, it's obviously, having children and raising children, but there's other stuff too. Like when you read Proverbs 31, it doesn't mean that the wife is just sitting at home barefoot, pregnant, and waiting for the husband to come home. Like she does a lot of stuff in that, and does things for the family, So I would say my answer to that, and what Tommy probably should have said, okay, is that what you get out of it is children, right? I have the children, and I will be a mom to those children. I'll be faithful. I'll take care of the home, and I will be a good wife to you as well as a good mother. And there's maybe some other stuff, but
are women having children?
The birth rate would suggest otherwise. So
then it appears like perhaps they're failing at their duty,
broken.
Right? So if a woman brings this up as a duty, right, and knows that you can counter by saying, like in Tommy Lauren's particular case, does she have children?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
and so the thing is, it's like, a lot of these women, the reason they can't utilize this as an answer is because they don't live up to the very dutied expectation that they themselves would permeate to other people, right? I agree with you. I think that childbirth is uniquely a thing. I mean, only women can do this. And it puts them in a position of privilege in society. And we put them there because they need to be protected, right?
Yeah.
But what do we get here? We're supposed to be getting the children, and we're supposed to be getting the mom for the children, and the dutiful wife, and the women of great virtues, as I brought up. Right. Tommy Lauren, the reason this was such kind of a shot against her is because what she said was, men innately want to just do this for us. Right. Yeah. So what does she do? She instantly assigns herself and all women privilege. We instantly put ourselves in a position of privilege versus men. It's innate for you, Stephen, that you want to buy me nice shit and then watch me put it on. Yeah. Like, you're privileged. You're privileged. Yeah. Don't you want me to be happy buying nice shit? And you get to provide it. You're doing you're doing exactly what a real man's supposed to do, and I'm doing exactly what a woman's supposed to do. I have to tell
you, you're a horrible salesman.
Yeah.
You really are. Yeah. And by the way, it's not so much the putting on as the taking off that's the fun part.
Exactly.
So let's just be clear.
Come on, let's just be honest here. Wherever disagreements exist,
with your wife,
that's a crowd pleaser.
With your wife.
Let me. Okay, so that is, and it was fascinating to me. I will say, I don't want to keep going back to it. That no one answered, not even the homosexual sort of ally in there. No one on that show answered at any point.
Time.
And when they were asked, they still kept coming back to what was clearly an expected duty of men all the time.
Yeah.
And men are checking
And what's
out.
the very first thing they always say? And you'll see it on every single kind of feminist exchange I have. You're not a real man, right? So you get to make the determination on what men are or aren't, right? Yeah. Now, what if I said this back to you? Oh, you can't have children? You're not a real. How would that go over? Wouldn't go
very
over
poorly.
Oh, really? Probably wouldn't go over very well, right? Yeah. But if they assign that as a duty that women ought to be moving towards, it doesn't mean every woman can have kids. They can't. Right. We know this. But they also should not be trying to provide an environment where other women are not. They should not be moving in society towards a lack of childbirth, but facilitating other women having children and families, even if they themselves can't. I mean, we wouldn't count them out. You wouldn't say, oh, you had a hysterectomy because you had cancer? You're not anymore. That's not what, of course, that's ridiculous. But what we would say is, if you've had the hysterectomy, right, and you can't have children, that sucks. but you should still be in society trying to create the conditionals so that other women can.
Yeah,
right.
Not
instead
advocating
of trying,
for them
instead of trying to agitate against it or promote against it, you should be trying to at least lay the groundwork down so that other women can fulfill their duties. And how do I know this? Because that's exactly what men are expected to do. You're in a wheelchair, you can't work, right? You can't provide security, resources, things like this. You still have an obligation, right, to at least attempt to facilitate so that others can. Right. So that you're not getting in the way of other people doing that, and you're still promoting in society that they can.
Well, hold on. Just as a follow-up, has anybody, not obviously Time of the Wren, because I don't think she has, but has anybody else articulated that to you in private or in some conversations? How is that possible? Because it really is the only logical answer that you can have.
Well, first of all, people don't think. And secondly, there was a feminist on this, on another Piers Morgan feminist panel I did, the Dunkin' Donuts panel, where the feminist did say, well,
not sponsored by them.
I think women have an obligation to have children.
Yeah.
Until I pressed her on it. And then suddenly that obligation, she was like, well, okay, maybe not, right? Maybe I don't actually think that. Backed away from it very quickly, and it was all back to what men's responsibility to women are, right? Women's responsibilities have been completely thrown off of them since the sexual liberation, right? Since especially the 60s and 70s, the entire thing was the removal of patriarchy. So if you're going to be a victim class, even though you outnumber men, but you're still the victim class, right? Well, then who are your victimizers? Well, it can only be men, right? So if men are in charge of systems, that's what patriarchy is. So women, when you're talking about feminism and covert feminism, you see right-wing women do this all the time, where they try to get an egalitarian caste, right? We want egalitarianism with men at the highest echelons, highest levels. Well, that necessarily displaces male power, therefore displacing patriarchy. And you, as a conservative woman, are supposed to be for patriarchy. You're supposed to want there to be patriarchy inside the household. That's what you advocate for, but not in government. Somehow men are okay to rule their household, but the second they're in charge of the planet, then it's a problem. It's like, what are you talking about?
Well, it's
absurd.
Had only female world leaders, there'd be no wars.
Yeah, except here's part of that red pill packet descriptors, right? There's some famous studies which were done that went back and looked at queens and looked at kings. And turns out when queens were in charge, there was more war, not less war. And the myth of the matriarchy anyway has been completely reduced to rubble. There's never been a matriarchy in all of human history. Ever, anywhere.
Qualify that. What do you mean?
So patriarchy is from the father, right? Most of the time, everything is done through what are called patrilineal means. So from father to son. So this is the chains of power. There have been queens, right? But the entire governing body is not women. The entirety of the governing body is always men everywhere, all the time. And essentially, it always has to be that way because we have the monopoly on force. So if you look back through history, you'll see the dumb liberals will say things like, well, in the Arapaho tribe of the Navajos and the, blah, blah. It was a pure matriarchy where women were in charge. And then you look into it. And you find out this is based on progressive nonsense, verbal history, right? This comes down to verbal history. And you go, okay, well, how come it wasn't in our recorded history, when we actually started dealing with this tribe, how come the men were making all the decisions and the chiefs, right? Oh, well, that was because of colonialism. Well, how come there's no recorded history of these matriarchies? Because they never existed. And these people are frauds. And what they do is they say, well, there's a verbal history. So you can't prove any of this.
A little more oral history probably wouldn't have such a problem with it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and speaking of the other thing you just said, and this is interesting. You're talking about when you're talking about the idea of women's happiness, there's been 2 comprehensive meta-analysis studies which have been done, piggybacking off each other, which study women all over the world. And regardless of the conditions they're in, doesn't matter what, regardless of the conditions, no matter how egalitarian, no matter how not egalitarian, no matter if they're in all the positions of power or not, in a comparative analysis, they're always less happy than men, always. So basically, it's just like, even in the conclusions of these studies, it says, you just can't make happy. You just can't